How's everyone doing? All right. We don't have too much going on this week, so that was good. We have some I'm going to say some spicy stuff to cover later about a blunder that happened from AWS's side. There's been things been done to I'll say mitigate their blunder. But yeah, it's a good lesson for anybody that's trying to build a community of people. So we'll cover that. Actually, security was also somewhat mild. There's only one big thing, and then I found an article on the rapid reset attack and how it actually works that I thought you guys might like to read if you guys are interested in that. I know last week we covered sort of in depth of the rapid reset attacks. And so yeah. So then we also have a bunch of exciting open source things. There was a couple things in open source that I feel are interesting. Yeah, interesting is the best way of saying it. I don't know exactly how they're going to impact people at this point. But they're things that I like seeing, especially the Google's Falcon that they open source is pretty cool. So and lastly, we have the European Cyber Resilience Act, CRA, that we have something interesting that's coming out of that. I think we need to talk more about. We need to dig deeper into because I actually feel like possibly if the things I have read, I'm not a legal expert, and nothing I say is legal advice. Um, could have major impacts on people contributing to open source going forward in Europe. So that will be something we have to keep our eyes on for sure. Hello, Nighthound. How are you doing? Yeah, Russell, I would actually. So this actually only came to my attention somewhat recently, and I've spent some time digging into it, but I didn't get a ton of time. And like I said, I'm not a legal expert, so I would actually love to talk to if there is a legal professional that wants to get interviewed. I don't know of one that would like to explain some of the things to me a little bit better. I would absolutely love it because some of this seems kind of terrifying if my understandings are correct. And I'll talk about my understandings. I'll leave a link to it for you all. So you can go, test it out or test it out. There's nothing to test out. You can read it yourself, which I recommend that you do. All right, let's jump into security. Let's do this. Let's jump into security. The first thing that I wanted to post for you all is this rapid reset. So Google released what I thought was a really nice, pretty clear article on how it happened. And I don't think I shared this with you guys last week. And so I wanted to share it with you because I reviewed it this week. So this is basically just a really quick intro into like the technologies involved that made it possible. So basically, this is a feature of the stream multiplexing, which is inherent to HTTP2. And with stream multiplexing, you're allowed to use, one layer 4 connection to send, multiplexing, multiple things, basically two directional there on one layer 4 connection. And this is kind of different than HTTP1. And what happens is that there's this ability to send this reset stream. Basically what happens is the rapid reset connect, our rapid reset attack is basically where the client just calls reset a bunch of times, invoking stress on the server. So this is the kind of the evolution of it. I recommend that you read this. I'm not going to go into detail on it. I thought about making a video on it. I might still make a video next week on it because I think it's an interesting. I think there's an interesting perspective you can look at how hackers leverage kind of good behavior to do bad things. And it's a pretty clear example of that as well. And so I recommend everybody read it. The only other thing that was brought to my attention by Nighthound of the community was Cloudflare's investigation of the January. Not this. It wasn't this. What this is the first Okta compromise. So Cloudflare was entangled with Okta in 2022 when they had their first support thing where they leaked some keys and things were compromised. And they released this, how Cloudflare mitigated yet another Okta compromise. Now, I agree with other people in the community that this seemed a little bitter towards Okta. I feel like if I had to read between the lines of this post was that Okta could do better. And that maybe Cloudflare is a little upset about it. But that being said, there was another Okta compromise. Now, I went through and read Okta's response to this, and they did say that they have notified all impacted customers. So there was administrative credentials on Okta's security that were, I don't know if they were leaked or if they were obtained or not obtained, but leveraged. So there were impacted customers. If you're using Okta, they should have notified you if there's anything for you to do or if you're impacted by this. If you are impacted by this, I think it's imperative that you release something for your users to let them know that you're on top of it and you're moving forward with it. Hopefully you've already done that. All right. Now, it has happened because I guess Okta support will ask customers to upload an HTTP archive or a HAR file. And in these HAR files, there can actually be sensitive session data in the cookies. And I guess Okta says that it recommends people take the sensitive data out, but I don't know if they provide tools and stuff to do that. And they weren't actually really clear on exactly how their internal administrative systems were breached by getting a sensitive key through the hard files. So they're very vague, but they did release a list of IP addresses not to trust. So very vague, but at least they released what they needed to on that. And that was it for security. Did you guys see anything else in security that was interesting or we should know about as developers that write products for other people to hit? All right. So we'll move on to some cloud news. There wasn't a ton of cloud news, and as AWS reInvent comes closer and closer, we expect to see less and less information or less things. They're saving the really big things for reInvent, and they're going to start dropping some of those things then. But what I did want to bring up is I think I'm a little late. I think that it was 6 or 7 days ago. AWS, I believe, had an outage. Now, I saw some stuff around this, and I wanted to bring you guys and make sure you were aware of it, because they do have guarantees around their replication. So if you look there again, if you look at the service health, like I said, I wasn't directly impacted by this, so I didn't actually see it. But there was articles and people talking about AWS outage, as well as Down Detector noticed a spike in people reporting it being down. So I don't see it in their service health here, just because they only keep a little bit of time. And I tried to go through the last couple days, but it's very difficult to. Yeah, I didn't find anything. I tried to look through the last 10 days. I didn't find anything. But Corey Quinn, who is usually up on this, is, well, object storage replication has been busted since 4:30 a.m. Pacific time today. 15 hours later, they have new mitigations we're evaluating. So there definitely was something on October 18th, whether I was able to find it well or not. And Corey also brought up this, where the Amazon S3 replication time control feature service level agreement, basically giving a guarantee and how much service credit percentage you'll get. So effectively, if it's less than 95%, you'll get 100% service. And that is with a monthly 15-minute replication percentage. So basically, how many of your records are replicated within 15 minutes. So if this affected you, if you leverage this, I would definitely be looking into it a little bit more. The one thing they did kind of release this week, but was kind of poorly released per the experts that are out there, was that Amazon Passkey. Now, this is not their announcement, because I couldn't find their announcement. I don't know if this was not AWS, because I really only track AWS, but it was poorly done. So Amazon Passkey responds to consumer demand with poor implementation. So Passkey, we've talked about it. Google now does it by default. But the problem that they have here is that not everything they use leverages it. So like if you want to use the mobile app to connect, well, you still have to do two-factor authentication with your normal password. It doesn't support it. If you want to do Amazon Prime Video, you also can't use it. So there was a bunch of random services that it didn't support in AWS. Even if using Passkey, you still had to provide a two-factor authentication token, because well, they don't know why, even though Passkey really shouldn't require a two-factor authentication key. So there's no native app support, inferior device management. There was, yeah, and then the redundant verification step. There was quite a few things that were amiss with it. Now, again, maybe this is their initial rollout. I don't know, but yeah. Other than that, I didn't see anything else major from any of the other clouds. Other than yeah, I didn't see really anything other major. I even checked some of the minor clouds like DigitalOcean and Linode, and I didn't find anything major in those that has happened. So as far as the game, what percentage of AWS new products announcements at reInvent will be AI focused? I assume it's going to be, I think minimal. I'm going to say minimal. If they're going to play it right, I think everyone is bored of hearing about generative AI. Their Bedrock and their other things out there for generative AI are already out there. I think maybe 25% tops, if you're going to play it right. If you're asking me how to play it right, 25% tops. You have your biggest, flashiest AI things that you do, and then you move on. You move on and you do some other amazing feature that's just not AI related. Doesn't even matter. It can be ridiculous web 3. You do something like that. That's what I would do. Now, I'm not a marketing expert, and you probably shouldn't want to take my advice, but that's what I would do. If I was betting, though, Russell, I would say that 90% of their announcements are AI ML. So, all right. Yeah, so that's it for our cloud news. Did anybody say anything else? I think most of the clouds were really quiet last week. I'm not sure why. It's not so close. I know during reInvent, other clouds try not to release stuff. I think sometimes Azure tries to release stuff after reInvent. So I feel like they wait, and if they have something they think beats something AWS release, they could swoop in like the week after, and it's like, oh, look what we have. We already had this prepared as an announcement. And then I think they just don't announce it if it's not better, and they move on. So that's generally my take on that. We can move on to open source. There's a couple things I was really excited about in open source. Actually, I have an article from the guy that created Ruby, David Hansen, Ruby on Rails. Not Ruby. Maybe he created Ruby. I don't know who created Ruby, but definitely Ruby on Rails. David Hansen. I have an article that I thought was kind of interesting on open source that we can talk a little bit about. I actually like it. I disagree with David Hansen on of many things, like Ruby being awesome at all. But I think that he has some pretty good takes as well. Matt's made Ruby. Okay. I'm not a Ruby person. I think he made Ruby on Rails, though. I know he's a huge supporter of it, for better or for worse. One of the things I can disagree with him on. All right. So let's talk about some of the things that I saw in open source this last week. Google open sources Falcon. A reliable. I can't vouch for its reliability. I can't vouch for its low latency hardware transport to the ecosystem. Now, this is something maybe very few of us will ever get to actually leverage, because this is more for your data centers. Although I would love to make a data center for the Null cloud, I have realistic expectations. So what does Falcon do is it tries to make Ethernet the backbone and do better AI ML stuff. So it basically is trying to handle Ethernet as the backbone for a data center better. So yeah, workloads such as storage have needed some of these attributes a long time. However, with the newer use cases such as massive scale AI ML, training and high performance computing, the need has grown significantly. So this takes basically a bunch of their open source papers that they've released around Casual, Snap, Swift, TLP, PLB. I know I've talked about PLB and Rack. I don't think I've talked about the other ones. Anyways, so it basically takes a lot of these things and puts it into basically I'm going to say firmware. I don't know quite how to say it. It's effectively firmware. That's going to basically lowers layers of Falcon to use the 3 key insights to achieve low latency and high bandwidth, yet lossy Ethernet data center networks. So basically, it's looking to, make the data center networks better. So I'm really excited about this. Like I said, whether any of us get to actually use it or not, I don't know. All right, David did do Rails. I thought it was Rails. I said Ruby at first, and then I was like, no, I don't think it was Ruby. But Rails. Okay, that makes sense. He does love Ruby on Rails and Ruby. So, anyways, I was really excited about this, and I kind of look forward to getting to use it in the future. I feel like if I get to use this, then I've done something right in my life, or something wrong, depending on how you look at it. Another bit of open source announcements comes from Microsoft this week. I know everybody loves Microsoft open source, but this almost feels a little bit like the Project Eddington that we've been working on. It's like people agree with me that this is a problem that needs to be solved. So I'm actually interested in getting my hands on the code a little bit, but for the time being, what is it? It's Radius. Radius is a single tool to describe, deploy, and manage your entire application. Now, exactly what this is until we use it ourselves, I'm not sure. But basically, it's a layer that's supposed to sit between the things that you use on the clouds and the clouds themselves. I'm assuming since they say Kubernetes here, they mean bare metal Kubernetes, like any Kubernetes compliant Kubernetes CNCF compliant Kubernetes cluster. That's my assumption. So if you want to run Kubernetes on bare metal. But it also bridges between all of these. Now, exactly how integrated it is into the clouds or whatnot, that's something I'm interested in seeing. If Radius is running on top of Kubernetes, does it tell you that you can't use Redis, or does it use the Redis on the server, or does it provide you on the cloud host? You know, if Redis as a service or whatnot. So I'm very interested in seeing not only how they did it and breaking open this code. We'll probably do a stream on it where we review the code, try to run it, and look at how they've done some of the things. But also, I'm interested in the capabilities of it, and I think it's pretty cool. So one of the things that really caught my eye when reading this, that really makes me think of Eddington, the Null cloud that we've worked on, is that it said... so there's like the application graph showing you how your application is connected. I should have had this pulled out. But basically, one of the things that they're saying that it will do is it will detect if your application is configured to run a database, and it will not only stand the database up in your cloud provider, but it will also give your application a connection and everything to it and configure it for it, which I was like, that is literally one of the things I have talked about needing to do. And I love that other people are talking about this. So yeah, this is what they're talking about here, is basically connecting those things and making it very transparent. You know, you need an Azure Cosmos DB. You don't want to configure your application or configure Azure Cosmos for it either. So anyways, I was excited about this. I'm sure we'll talk about it in the future a little bit. Other things in open source was the system initiative. Now, I don't really know exactly what this is yet. I only saw this yesterday, and yeah, so I'm generally my interests are peaked. So today we're proud to open source the System Initiative software under the Apache license version 2.0. Now, I have not used System Initiative's things before, but they say that it is the better versioning. Our ambition wasn't to make a slightly better version of existing DevOps tools. It was to make an order of magnitude improvement on the entire experience. Now, a lot of people have different meanings of the word DevOps. But they're calling themselves the second wave of DevOps tooling. I'm pretty excited to see exactly what they're doing. They offer a free account, so I'm gonna have to see exactly what they're doing. But they did open source all of their stuff, so you can go. It's in a Apache 2. I will have to warn you though, it's a rough repo because it's a mono repo, and mono repos are always difficult to get into. If you want one project, you got to do it. But one thing I did appreciate about it is 40% of it is Rust. Now, we'll have to forgive them for the 31% that is Starlark. We'll forgive them. But the other is Vue and TypeScript, so this makes it 50% off. Awesome. 50% awesome. We'll pretend there's no Python. So anyways, I'm excited to see exactly what this is. Again, I don't know exactly what they mean. I'm going to post this for you guys because, again, DevOps means a lot of things to a lot of people, but this I'm interested to see what they mean by next generation tooling. I'm interested in understanding their take on it better. It's a pretty vague word, though. I don't like the word DevOps because it means too many things to too many people, almost like microservices do. So, what does DevOps mean to me? It means nothing. Because, like I said, I use English to communicate to people. And if a word is too vague, it doesn't really mean anything to me. This is why I don't like the word. I can't use it. I can make up a definition myself, and I can leverage that definition. But if that's not conveying it to you very well, and if it's confusing to you what I mean, then it's not a very good word. Now, I can sit and come up with a definition if you'd like, and it would be kind of a vague definition, bringing developers a faster release time, kind of bringing operations and development closer together. It doesn't mean that they're the same people, but it doesn't mean it's not the same people. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know that I could define it from it. I'd have to think about it if you want my definition. But I don't know that my definition is very good. It's interesting because every app deploys differently, and every application's needs are different. And so trying to come up with one system to rule them all seems a little weird to me as well. So some things that I really like that have come from DevOps, that the DevOps movement, is faster feedback. So I think one thing that DevOps really pushes for a lot of the times is the ability for developers to have tests that run on their code that give them feedback immediately. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't have a QE team. That doesn't mean that you don't have some people that are specifically looking for that. But it means that they get faster feedback on their application. I think that's one of the things that I really support and understand is that really fast feedback. Hey, on my PR, there are some amount of tests that run. Every night, there are some set amount of tests, and I get that feedback quickly. That way, my mind is still fresh on that PR. I'm still thinking about that PR, and it's not a month later. It's not a week later. It's right now, right when I opened it. So there's some things like that. Now, I personally don't think that developers are particularly good at running things in production. I know many people like that are very good at that type of thing and that actually like doing it. And so I don't think, to me, if you ask me, my personal opinion is making developers do operations. Like I said, maybe bringing them closer together so that you don't get I throw something over the fence. But this is not a broad across the industry. You can't take what I'm saying as I'm telling you my personal experience and my likes and dislikes from a very broad, vague term. Yes, Russell, I tend to agree with you. I tend to agree with you. So I think DevOps is going on my banned word list just like microservices are, to be honest. Yeah. I love the term service-oriented architecture because it's actually more concrete. It has a goal. You can weigh each service by, is it a service-oriented architecture? Whereas microservice, how small does it have to be before it's a microservice? It's kind of vague. And I'm getting really tired of like these catchphrases that are vague. All right. Did anybody else notice anything else in open source? DevSecOps is a little different in the fact that, again, my take would be that your security team has a way to make sure that tests and requirements are run on every single pull request. And if that's the case, then I think it's a good thing. If you have a security team that says every single image needs to be scanned, every single, every single piece of code needs to be scanned, and I want those reports given to the developer when they make a pull request, it's fantastic. It's fantastic. It doesn't mean you don't have a security team, and it doesn't mean that your developers are doing security. It means that you're tightening that feedback loop. You're right. You're right. It's I need to shift left a little bit more. I need to shift to left a little bit more. See, my thing is, if you tell me that DevOps is making everyone work tighter as a team, as a single cohesive team, where a security person can come in and say, hey, we need to do this and I can help or whatnot, then I love the word DevOps, or DevSecOps, or whatever you want to call it. You can call it Jim Bob's method of architecting or running teams. I don't know. All right. Unfortunately, the overflow means our customers are now our devs. All right. The last thing in open source that I have, unless you guys bring something else up, is the European Cyber Resilience Act, the CRA. Now, I have a lot of worries about this and what it means to development in open source development in Europe. Now, the text is long, and you can go read the text. There's a bunch of text, and I have only read other people's results. Well, or I've only mostly read other people's takes on it. I have read some of their statements here as to what it means, but I have definitely not gone over the whole thing. Like I said, I would actually love to talk to a legal expert in Europe. If you can get them on the stream, I would love to talk to them because I think that the awareness of this, I wasn't completely aware until recently. And I think the impact of this is possibly very staggering. The idea, I think, is good. They want to make open source more secure. The problem is, also, I find this funny. Isn't this like the justice is blind thing from the United States? I feel like that's what this is. Isn't this a US? I don't know about that. But anyways, very nice pictures. I love them. The idea is to make your software more secure. At the root of this, though, my understanding currently is that it puts the onus on the developer. It makes them assume all the risk, which means the developer of an open source project takes all of the risk of somebody getting hacked, which just means that none of them will ever do it because they're not getting paid for their risk. Like there is no reward for it. This is, again, maybe an oversimplification, but the concept that I'm starting to understand for it. So I would love to. I'm going to be digging into it more this week because, like I said, I've only gotten to read a little bit myself, not saying that I'll understand all of it. And there's quite a bit when you're talking about, there's a lot of preambles, there's a lot of chapters. It's quite a bit, but I'm going to post this in there so you guys can go ahead and check it out yourselves. I highly recommend that you do. We need to be up on this more as a group, making sure that we protect the future of open source. Dang it. Okay. All right. I have been corrected live on stream yet again. The first known representation of blind justice was Hans. I'm sure it's Hans. I said it wrong first, but I corrected myself. Hans. I'm not going with the last name, in 1543. So definitely we stole it from the EU. So there you go. Did not know that. Thank you for putting that out there. Awesome. All right. So we have a little bit of what I'm going to call spicy news from AWS. They kind of screwed up. Unless if anybody else has anything else to add to the CRA. Like I said, I am looking for somebody that is an expert that would like to talk to me, because I think it would be a really good conversation to have, and we can talk to our, you know, well, I can't say ours because it's not a US thing, but we can hopefully get the conversation started. All right. So AWS learned a lesson today, or this last week. Basically, if you have diehard community fans, don't send them cease and desist without talking to them first. Talk to them first, and don't just, especially if you're AWS. If I send you a cease and desist, you might be able to outlast me with your lawyer. My cease and desist doesn't carry that much weight, but with something like AWS, their lawyers can crush you, which means if you get a cease and desist, even if you're in the right, the responsible approach is to just back away and stop doing it. I mean, unless if you're Microsoft, the responsible thing is, and that's what people did. So there were these things, there were two of them, now there's only one, which were unofficial, and this has always been unofficial, never said official, reInvent schedule planner. Basically, the reInvent schedule planner is so bad and has been so bad for years. People that were huge fans of reInvent made their own and made them open to the public to use, to just let you plan your day. And it turns out that AWS Advents decided they didn't like this and sent cease and desist letters to these people. Now, there's a good write-up here from last week in AWS. I don't know if you guys know Corey Quinn, but he covers a lot of AWS stuff. And this was a great, I had originally gotten a bunch of tweets in history format, but he already summarized it really well. So if you guys want a summary of it, basically one session tracker was completely deleted. Amanda Brock and Open UK might be good person to talk. Amanda Brock of Open UK. Okay, I will email them, Russell. Thank you so much for putting that on there. I would love to do my part as well. I want to see the entire world get to partake in open source, and so it would hurt my heart just a little bit if people in Europe were not able to do it easily. There might be companies that still hire you to do it because the company is taking on that risk, but I think even a lot of companies would pull out because they don't want that risk themselves. So yeah. Okay. Thank you. One second. I'm going to take this as a note really quickly. I am trying to get at least one person on a month. I have another person lined up to do interviews with. I know I wasn't very good with the first one. We had a fantastic person on, and Dan absolutely nailed it, hit it out of the park. But I want to get a little bit better at doing it. Haven't done it very much, so we'll keep up with that. And yeah, so okay, thank you. All right, so basically, Luke Von, yeah, I don't know. I'm just going to call him Luke. Luke basically deleted the code, deleted everything because of the cease and desist. He didn't want to take any risk. The problem is, it actually got a little bit worse. So the cease and desist went out. AWS Events was the people doing it. One of the problems is after they came back and apologized, in their apology, they said, well, really, we just didn't want them to provide capacity information because that's behind a signed in place. So basically, they were leaking information that was signed in. The problem is the capacity is in their public. So even in their comeback, two things to note. First, they should have just talked to him, because if they wanted capacity taken out of their trackers, if they had just talked to these two people of these session managers, they would have taken capacity out. Two, it feels like a bad excuse because, like I said, capacity is in their public API you can get without a token. So go read this if you want. But yeah, that was kind of reInvent's blunder. She's done CNC stuff. Oh, awesome. That's awesome. I'm like I said, I'm going to message her, see if she'll join. That would be awesome. I'd love to do my part to share awareness. So I'm working on cutting down Dan Lorik's presentation and doing a few small visuals with it. I'm going to send it to Dan first to get his take on it, see if it does it justice. And then I'll be posting that to YouTube as well. I'd like to do those interviews as awareness, helping people bring awareness to different things that are coming out and whatnot. So, all right. I think David Hansen and I would have a really good conversation. I'm actually going to try to get him on the show at some point. Whether he wants to or not, I think I would get to have some fun hate, because I think he gets hated on more than he deserves. Like I said, I don't agree with everything that he does or says, but he has a lot of experience, and I have always said to you all that I'm not sure that open source is a good business plan. It's not a good business plan to try to sell your code that's freely available. That, to me, just doesn't. It seems to be a weird place to be. And I like David Hansen's latest take on this. So he says, I love writing and sharing code as open source, but it's not an abstract act of pure altruism. So what he's saying here, and his basis, is that he doesn't just write open source because he's thinking purely of others. The first recipients of these programming gifts are almost always myself and my company. So basically he's saying he's written a bunch of stuff that he himself has leveraged, like Ruby on Rails, and he wrote those things for him and his company, for what he's doing, because it serves a purpose. It's an intentionally selfish drive first, then a broader benefit second. But ironically, this is what made my perception in the gift exchange of open source sustainable for 20 years and counting, putting my own mask on first so I can keep helping others. Contrast this perspective to the resentment I occasionally see from open source developers who feel shortchanged by the exchange. People who get sucked in by the ideal of pure altruism and pursue it, but then are disappointed by what they perceive as a lack of reciprocation after a while. This has always seemed like a contradiction in terms to me to expect specific forms of reciprocal. I can't say that stupid word. Okay, from acts of altruism. So basically, it's a short statement, and he goes on to talk about the things that he's done. But I really liked it, and so I'm going to post it in chat because it resounded with me. I love open source. I give a lot of stuff to open source for people. I make a bunch of free videos. But I also learn from the videos that I make. One of the things that has kept me learning through the years, even though as I moved more to management, is because I do those videos that try to help people, and it keeps me there. And a lot of the times I make a video on something I learned from, whether it's a blog I learned from or whatnot. So, yeah. So anyways, I liked it. I thought that it was worth pointing out, and yeah. I'll see if I can't get David on. He'd probably laugh at me. Like I said, I disagree with David on a lot of things. I hate duck typing. Absolutely hate duck typing, Ruby on Rails, and pure JavaScript. Two things that he loves. He's smarter than me. That's the thing. I'm not smart enough to go with pure duck type. Like, I just can't do it. Russell, this has always been my point, is open source isn't a viable business. It's not a business plan. It's not a good business plan. It's a crap business plan in my thing. That doesn't mean I don't like open source, because people are always like, oh, you're not going to see open source companies and things like that. And I'm like, I don't understand. Personally, I think that Google and Microsoft do a pretty good job. They open source a lot of stuff, from the C#, C#.net to a bunch of other things. You can even get Visual Studio Code as open source without their garbage tied in. And are those tools selfish? I believe they are. They serve their purpose first. Let's talk about Falcon. This is something Google used directly itself. This is something they want, and they're leveraging or going to leverage. I don't know if they actively leverage it or not, but they're either leveraging it or going to leverage. It's a selfish drive first that the larger community can take. Now, I think there's good things to open sourcing things as a business. You get community, you get things like that. So there are business aspects to it, but I just don't see it as a business model. That's my thing. I don't see open source as the business model. We're going to make things and make them all open source. Now, I think that if you're like HashiCorp and you made that bit your business model, you're in a rough spot. Because now when you decide that, oh, it's not a good business model anymore, you've made that you've cultivated that community and you've made them angry. You've literally made them angry, because that was part of that was part of what made you awesome. Terraform wasn't awesome because it was the best tool always. It was awesome because it worked on all the clouds and you could, fix it if you needed to. I don't know. So anyways, I like that. Makes sense to build it for yourself and open it if you're a huge company. Yep, I agree. Or I would say if you're a huge company, or I would actually go on to say that if you are if it's not too, like, okay, Ruby on Rails, for example, in David Hansen's thing, he doesn't make money off of Ruby on Rails. Ruby on Rails is a means to an end. It was a platform he created to deliver apps. That's what that is. And so it never interferes with his money making. It was never a thing that he made money. I think those are great projects to open source, because if you're solving a problem in your development lifecycle that other people are obviously going to have, but you yourself don't make money on it, well, then open source it. It builds you a community. It gets you free help on it that helps make it better when people see it from different angles. It's these little companies that have one or two products that are both open source, but have an enterprise plan, which is single sign-on and more users per account. Yeah. Now, it's a hard place to be, because those small companies usually rely on open source to get those enterprise customers. And the reason they do that is because basically enterprise companies are like, well, if you go under, like you're talking about your big ones, if you go under, I want to have access to your code. Now, I think this is great to release your stuff under like a business source license, because then it's still available, it's still out there, and you can even make provisions in it for other people to use it under a different license that don't make money off of it per se. And you can put a provision in the BSL that if your company ceases to exist as an entity, the code will go pure open source. So they're protected in the case that you go away. I think that this is a beautiful way for smaller companies that have something like that to exist. Yes, you can do escrow contracts, yes. I don't think companies like the escrow contracts as much, but yes, for sure. I think that BSL is just a really fantastic one, though, because it's there. But yes, there are other contracts that allow for that, for sure. The BSL, I think, helps people foster a community, because if I wanted to use it here on my home lab or something, I could without paying for it. So I think it really helps foster some of it. Now, I haven't seen the BSL be hugely successful in fostering a community, so maybe it's not, but it's also a little bit newer. So I'd be interested in a company that started with the BSL. Yep. Yes, Russell. If you want to put your source out there, find something like the BSL. I'm not saying it's the be all of them. There's other ways to do it as well. Other licenses out there. I actually really like the SSPL. I know people are going to get really mad at me, but the SSPL says you can use our thing as long as you don't provide it as a service. That's what it says. It's open source other than that statement. So as long as you're not providing X as a service, you can use it. I kind of like that one. You're saying my business model is as a service. I'm going to make it easy. I'm going to make it serverless. I'm going to do all those things. If you want to manage it all yourself, go for it. Have fun. AWS, GCP, Null Cloud, screw you, which is acceptable. I get it. That's your business plan. All right. Thank you so much. Please let me know if there are other people you'd like to see on the show. I think we're going to get somebody for Kubernetes release off the SIG release team for the next release of Kubernetes to have a little conversation of the most exciting things coming up in his mind. Hopefully we get some traction on the OpenSUSE side to get some ideas there. And so, hopefully at least once a month, we're going to get an interview. Hopefully Amanda accepts my requests. We become friends on LinkedIn, and I'll get you those. Thank you guys for joining my news. I hope that you guys enjoyed the news. I hope you find it helpful. Please let me know in Discord or on here if there's other things I could cover or other ways I could look at the code. I'm looking to dig a little deeper into some of these things instead of just a high level. I tried to do that with the cyber resilience, the CRA this week, but I found out that the deeper I dug, the more I found that I was out of my depth, so that I was not going to have the amount of time to really go into it. But I do look forward to, hopefully shedding a little bit more light on it, and at least bringing you guys to it. Get the CEO of NVIDIA and ask them why there's NVIDIA RAMs on their GPUs. Okay. I don't disagree with you, though. I don't understand why there's so little memory on GPUs. It's a valid point. I would love to ask them. Because memory is cheap. I mean, not nearly as cheap as disk, but I mean, memory for 32 gigs is nothing. So, I don't know. I don't know if it's because they struggle to leverage more. My question is maybe that's the right amount for how many, cores they have, how much processing power they have. That's the right amount of memory. So giving it more memory wouldn't really help many things except for machine learning. That's the big thing. And if you want to do machine learning, they want you to buy their enterprise card. So that's why. I'm almost certain that's exactly what I've just figured it out. Yeah, it is going to get more expensive, isn't it? Memory. Yep. All right, that's it for me today. Thank you everyone for joining. Again, let me know how I can make these better. Yeah, I will see you guys next week. Have yourselves